All right. Hey, everyone. This is Arry Yu. I am the co-chair of the U.S. Blockchain Coalition and your co-host for this event. We had a series of panels and talks this one day on October 18th, and this was the final fireside chat with Dr. Brigitte Piniewski, and I ended up being the facilitator and moderator for this conversation. It was so good. Dr. Brigitte Piniewski, she's the author of Wealthcare, Demystifying Web3 and AI and the Rise of Personal Data Economies. It sounds really like conceptual and out there, but like when you actually start hearing her talk about real problems and like real problems that this technology could solve, it was just shocking. We were looking out into the audience and people were kind of like dozing off and getting quiet. And the minute Dr. Brigitte started speaking, like everyone just dropped whatever they were doing, looked up and got super engaged. It was just really such a good conversation. And if you haven't read her book, definitely check it out, Wealthcare. It's available on Amazon. And I really hope you really enjoy this conversation because this one just sent off so many light bulbs for me. If you have any questions or comments, let us know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And together we rise. Thank you, everyone. All right, so let me get my notes straight here. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for being here.
And thanks everybody else for being here. It's been a great afternoon, so much learning.
So for those of you that don't know you as well as I do, would you like to give an introduction of yourself, your background as an MD, and how you got into this space, writing books on emerging technologies and
Great, thank you. So yes, trained as a general practitioner with obstetrics, so spent the first few decades doing a lot of deliveries, thinking if we just did those 9 months of pregnancy correctly, we would be launching everybody into 100 years of good health. And clearly that was very wrong. I found out to my dismay, of course, that the healthcare model is completely out of date. And I originally thought it took 4 decades of sloppy living to give you diabetes, heart disease, stroke. But in truth, and what we're seeing today is that the conditions on the ground have changed so much that it's possible in just 4 years of puberty to have a hormonally altered event that makes you go irreversibly into chronic diseases of aging, such as diabetes, stroke, heart disease. And that's, of course, is something that's you and I, we never thought about puberty. It just happened. And so I call the folks in the room the last of the accidentally well. No one really had to pay attention to your mother. Your mother didn't have to know how to feed you, how to move you. You got good access to your genetic potential in ways in which are no longer available to the modern cohorts that are coming up behind you. And therefore we need technology to protect the next block of biology that shows up as humans so that they can have full access to their full genetic potential. So that gave me a huge urgency. 4 years is way too short. It's happening during puberty. That's 12 to 16 years of age for boys, and they don't even have an opportunity to have informed consent. And so with this, it's not a rarity. We have a third of the population, adolescent population at least, being overweight and obese. And so these hormonal changes are profound, they're fast, and we need intelligence at a pace that we can't get through traditional models.
I'm gonna go off script.
Oh.
Like a lot of what you said sounds really scary. Can you double click? What do you mean? Like during these 4 years of puberty, like what happened before that's not happening now, and why is it more scary now? Like, can you explain more?
Because I think historically, the older generations, they would go stir crazy because they didn't have a screen. And so boredom was something that we fought through physical movement. We had to go outside, run around, build forts, generate wars. Like it was something that the older population was very used to. But sitting still for 20 hours is impossible unless you have a screen that will allow you to trick your brain into seeing something that's so exciting and so captivating that you can't get away from it. And so we see that a lot with, of course, gaming and other opportunities to use screens. Many of us are knowledge workers. We're in front of the screen for hours a day. No idea that that project took me 3 hours. I only gave myself a half hour to do it. And so this world in which young folks are growing up in front of screens. I mean, we have 1-year-olds sitting and younger, sitting in high chairs because they can do the buttons, and the buttons allow them to be engaged so the parents can have a nice meal at the restaurant. And so this is a very different world for a biology that actually has no idea what's going on. Like, your biology has no idea that you carry a smartphone, or that there is a thing called the internet, and that now we're talking Web3 and AI. This biology is the same biology we had centuries ago, because it takes a long time for our biology to adapt to new situations. And what we're seeing is this sort of technology paradox, where the world, through technology, is changing basically over the weekend, and our biology, our operating system, has no ability to adapt that quickly.
So that's resulting in lots of issues with this, biological issues with the 4 years of puberty you mentioned.
Right, so it's what I saw mostly, very noticeable in boys especially, because what we found is that kids that were slightly overweight or obese during puberty, adipose tissue is one of these tissues that is a hormonally active tissue. It creates estrone, which is an estrogen-like compound. And so these are all what are understood to be sex steroids, and their receptors are not that particular. In other words, the receptor is only called a testosterone receptor because it takes testosterone more, has a greater affinity for testosterone than estrogens or estrogen-like compounds. But it's not that fussy. If an estrogen is floating by instead, that'll bind just as well. And so you have a situation where hormonally altered states, such as states that expected to have a lot of testosterone floating around now during puberty, these 4 years, now with the adiposity, you can have excess amounts of estrogen-like hormone that can mix up the messaging that's happening to the body. And of course, it's not just the secondary sexual characteristics that matter, because testosterone is supposed to go to the brain, the skin, the bones, the muscle, like all parts of your body, to create the type of, Herculean attitude that we expect out of our adolescent boys. We expect them to be upset with the way the world is, want to go out there and change things and make the world better. But in fact, what we see with some of these boys is they actually would much rather stay in front of a screen all day, don't bother anybody, hopefully nobody bothers them. They're not going for the big job, they're not going for the big relationship, they're not going to take the exam because they have this very different dwarfed self-concept that may be the result of, again, this world in which our biology didn't have a chance to catch up with.
And boys more than girls?
Well, just obviously easier to see with the boys because, we see boys. I had to do full physicals on 18 to 24-year-olds as they came into these federally run programs. These were boys at risk that may have had a brush with the law. They were coming onto a Job Corps campus to learn to be a chef's helper or an electrician's helper, something to make them employable. But of course, coming on campus meant that they would have health coverage, and as the physician in charge, I was responsible for doing full physicals on 18 to 24-year-olds. Not something we typically do, but these kids had very large breasts, so gynecomastia, with stretch marks called striae, pigmented. And pigmented striae or stretch marks, the blue marks of pregnancy, are estrogen overload marks. And for the first time in my life, I'm seeing what I saw with my pregnant women on boys. And I think this is very unusual.
Interesting. Oh, you have a question? Please,
yeah, so what I noticed and I think this is what you're speaking to, is that my nephews, right? Like my kids, you would just turn off the electricity in the house, they're all okay, I guess we're going outside. But the others are saying, well, all I want is a lazy boy chair and so I can get to my computer screen and play Valorant for the rest of my life. And it's so it's because of their where they are in their growth. It takes them like the passion that we used to see in them wanting to fix something or play some sport 24/7. They are now doing something on screen 24/7. Do you think that this habit becomes that you know how they say parents, you know, we always tell them what to do, but they're really watching our actions. And so as they watch us try to read our phones and do the laundry, or we're working, or we take work home and we're on screens at night or something, that they're taking that as their cue. Like, I am learning, that's what we're gonna do. And then because of our, you know, too much screen time, that's what they're picking up.
Yeah, no, I think it's very, very complex. It's not just the fact that we're also mimicking in front of them, you know, massive amount of screen time.
Yeah.
We're also doing convenience foods because we haven't had time to grocery shop, and we're providing, you know, less than adequate nutrition that used to not be available to older generations. I mean, it used to be the farm food came to the grocery store, and now we have a plethora through technology of food that is still called food but has no expiry date. It's going to last for 7 years and in your shelf, and you know, so I think it's very complex. It's not just that we're mimicking a certain behavior. It has to do with the food, has to do with the movement, has to do with the central nervous system, attention, et cetera, et cetera.
So nutrition's a huge part too.
Very much so.
All right, one more question, Michael.
Well, I'm hearing this and it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize we were going to talk about some of these kind of things, but so like something like esports, where at the professional level, I would say those professional esports are just like real athletes. Like, they train, they all eat together, they work out, like they're very cognizant of how to counteract their screen time. So I think it's interesting to observe. It's not just like, oh, if you have too much screen time, then you're gonna be bad, or that you're gonna have like horrible health, but like mindfulness versus being just completely oblivious to what something is doing to you. At least that's my observation in terms of like watching esports and observing it the same way that I watch regular sports, and seeing somebody who is a professional athlete versus someone who just plays pickup basketball and still has, you know, a beer gut or something like that. So anyways, just some perspective maybe.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm diverging
Yes.
back to your
That
book.
was not what we were supposed to be talking. But the book does start with trying to make the case that this is urgent. Like, this is not an accessory thing that's just more interesting, or, you know, it's going to help us be faster or somehow smarter. No, this is an urgent need to have a level of intelligence that will allow humans to understand what are the co-occurrences that matter most for each of us to have just basic access to our genetic potential and the ability to become the humans we want to become and have the lives that we hope to have. And that's something that now we're going to need technology to make, because there's no longer any accidentally well. We're the last of the group. The conditions on the ground have changed irreversibly. We're not getting rid of the screen. We're not getting rid of the vehicle. We're not getting rid of the fast food. But what we need now, thank goodness we have AI, is we need something that works really effectively to sift through hundreds of thousands of variables, that understands us at that same level of specificity through hundreds of thousands of variables about ourselves, and to match up what matters to you today, in this month, and in this year, et cetera, et cetera.
And this is what your book covers.
Well, sort of.
Okay, so what does your book cover?
So the book goes to the urgency, and then it does an important job of trying to explain to the healthcare industry, because I think we've heard this many times this afternoon, that education is still a big need, because this industry is very nascent. The healthcare industry in particular tends to be a laggard with technology, but I think in this case, even perhaps more so, because of course we're getting paid for the way things are right now. And so the book goes on into an opportunity to understand what is Web 1, what is Web 2, what is Web 3, and I would say, just as a tiny point of clarification, I don't think Web 3 is a technology, it's more so an ethos. It takes us from a place where we once had Web 1, which was World Wide Web, which meant everybody on the planet had the same access to the same information if they had an internet connection. And then what happened with Web 2 is we converted to a place where now we were going to do commerce on the internet, and we were going to have websites and things like that. That immediately shifted to companies having a much greater opportunity to utilize websites and commerce than we did, average individual. And so then the asymmetry happened of those folks, handful of folks that were using the internet in the Web 2 world to create great commerce, great business models, very strong financial futures for a handful of participants. Left us away from the Web 1. And so that's the internet we're in today, Web 2. But Web 3, the ethos, talks about how we can use new tools and technology to move us into a place where, again, we the individuals can have agency over the value that we produce and over the data that speaks about ourselves in ways that Web 2 wouldn't enable.
The pendulum swings back.
We hope, and as was said in the earlier panel, it's not going to be a complete swing, right? We're not. The goal here isn't go decentralized from decentralized from centralization. The goal is to move to the 2.5 type space. Figure out what works, what doesn't work, what's safe, and then we can always tinker over to get to 2.6, maybe 2.7. I don't think we'll necessarily, at least in my life, be at Web 3.0.
So interesting. So the intended audience for your book is normies or like healthcare professionals?
Well, actually, I'm a little bit optimistic.
Yeah.
But I was hoping to make it generic enough that it's certainly the healthcare folks, certainly the regular folks, and then policy, and then lawmakers, and trying to get everybody in the room at the same table, to give them a starter packet, to say, here's your starter packet, go ahead and don't read the part about NFTs and ZK proofs, etc., if you already know that stuff. But if you don't, here's a starter packet for you. And that way, hopefully we can get everybody to the same table, because as the WTIA cluster has shown us, is you do need diverse groups at the table to get anything done at the end of the day.
Amen. So you talk about the 3-zone model. What is that? And
right. So what I do, because again, I'm not a technologist either, physician by trade, do not ask physicians to build you anything tech, but I can describe it. And so the 3-zone model is very different from what we have today, because it goes into a place where the baseline, the bottom, I can't call it layer because layer means something else in crypto and platform, so I call it zone. Zone 1 is home base, and that's where I track and keep my own data for myself in ways that make sense for me, and gives me an opportunity to augment the stuff that physicians and hospitals have about me in ways that are very valuable, which we can go into later. So home base is all my stuff, basically. And then the zone 2 is an AI layer that sits, that has no IP, is completely non-rivalrous, which means all it does is serve up correlations. So no opportunity to convert those correlations into business models. Those things have to be authorized by the base layer to then be served up to the 3rd zone. The 3rd zone is your traditional commercial zone, where authorized correlations can be served up to industry. Industry can add scientific rigor and convert some correlations into causations and build new products and services based on that. So it's a model whereby you have this sort of fire hose of truth, using the new technologies that we talked about today to safeguard identity, security, privacy, while still allowing that fire hose of ground truth to be acted upon by AI in order to surface correlations that may or may not matter. and then specific industry experts can work on that information or those correlations to again create the products and services of the future that in a sense have been already the product market fit has happened because it was the market that surfaced those in the first place.
So crazy. So then 3-zone model, does this world, we talk about AI, does it also need a blockchain?
Absolutely, and I think that that's been said on the earlier panels really well, is that AI is only as good as the sort of veracity of the data that it used to train with, as well as the diversity of the data it used. And so really strong AI models in the future are going to be dependent upon a fire hose of truth coming from the free living system. And I think this 3-zone model is the way in which we can create that and stand it up in such a way that AI models can be continuously course corrected over time. Because we expect as conditions change, those models will always need to be updated. An AI is never sort of finished. You have to continuously have a mechanism by which the ground truths can continuously check whether we're still correct with this model.
So 3-zone model, blockchain will help with it. I'm assuming like IoT, like we're wearing lots of devices and we're gathering our own zone 1 data. But there have been lots of different programs around, employee wellness and wearables and sort of like that. How is what you're talking about different than what's already been done and, kind of been thrown into the trash can?
Yeah, you're so true. Graveyards full of employee wellness programs, with Fitbits and things like that. But I think that what we've seen historically is that these programs are all about, oh, you should do this for your health. Go ahead and track your steps for your health. That's a very low value proposition. And what we talk about in the book is that the industry has already taught us that health data is very valuable. It's incredibly valuable. We are exchanging transactions of billions of dollars of healthcare data. And yet, that healthcare data is not high quality data because it's only your clinic visits and your hospital visits. But in fact, what makes up you is really how do you move, how do you eat, how do you socialize. The real sort of clout behind the health that you're experiencing today, that clout does not exist in the clinic visit or didn't come from the hospital. It comes from how you live your life. And we are all physical first, which means the AI can't touch any of that until we digitize our health expressions in a way in which the AI can then analyze it. So moving to a place where now you can have very high fidelity understanding of the ebb and flow of our choices throughout the days, the months, and the years, that is something we can digitize using wearables. But it won't just be for our health, it'll be for the ability to use that data in data marketplaces. So it will offer us an economic asset that then we can utilize to, yes, understand how to do our own health better, but put our data streams into collaborative data streams that are answering questions for each other. So we might get to the place, hopefully quickly, where we'll begin to understand why people aren't getting cancer. Like today, we still have cancer that seems to fall out of the sky and hit somebody. And no, if we had understood hundreds of thousands of variables about individuals, we would probably be able to separate out, okay, there's a whole cohort of people out there not getting cancer. The answer to that does not lie in the clinic notes or the hospital notes, right? It lies on the surface. It lies in the ground truth of the way in which these people are living their lives. And so those sorts of questions can finally be answered.
I see lots of light bulbs going off and heads exploding. Mine too.
Okay.
So like, does this exist today? Like, we need this now. Does anyone have a zone 1 startup? Like, where is this now? We need it now.
Yeah, so it's starting off in interesting places, of course, and we see this very frequently with new technology. It happens on the fringes first. So, for instance, you see it in an area such as cannabis use. I mean, cannabis use is sort of kicked out of healthcare to begin with. That was kicked out of the business model by pharma because it's a natural product and there's no IP there. So there's a lot of folks that feel that cannabis makes a difference for them, and they utilize blockchains, EK proofs, and that technology to enable both the seed to sale requirements, because you're required to understand the seed to sale information on cannabis, which means we have the DNA of the product that you're taking. And then what happens on the other end, the users collaborate by sharing their experience. So if they buy cannabis product for sleep, they'll say, oh yes, I bought this product, here's the QR code, that's the seed to sale DNA information, and then this is how I used it, and this is the experience I had, and some other attributes around their specifics as individuals. And then that goes into this community data commons that we talked about, this zone 2, where we can then start to feed back to the community what works and what doesn't work for which individuals. And so you're seeing a model there where the free living system is creating the science that they can use to live by using this technology.
Oh my God, who wants to start a startup with me? I mean, seriously, I can sell it, I need builders. So, Andreessen Horowitz put out a paper suggesting that the biggest company in the world is a consumer healthcare company.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Right. That was actually almost a year ago, November 22. They talked about the biggest company in the world is going to be a consumer health company. And then they went on to a couple of really obvious but seriously, of course, true statements that healthcare already, we know it's like 20% of GDP, so it's a big player. A lot of people are looking at it. The number 8 at the time of the article was United Health Group, so that's pretty close. But what was interesting is they said, oh, it's not going to be a native health company, and they had some really good reasons why. Because in healthcare today, the consumer is not the customer, it's the payer. And so because it's the payer, you just can't fix that problem. The alignment is not there to create a very consumer-centric, and I love the way they describe it. They suggest the company is going to be consumer-obsessed and health tech first. And I'm thinking, yes, but that doesn't exist today. It's not a United Health plus an Apple. And they offer 2 sort of strategies, either the vertical one, which would be the United Health plus Apple, or which I think they called a payvider instead of a provider, payvider. But the other option was horizontal, and that was more of a sort of Amazon or Visa model. So I'm rooting for the second one, because I think the beauty of blockchain and Web3, it's for the first time in our lives, we've found a really safe way to manage all our transactions that are private and that we don't want other people to have access to, but we can still create a means by which those transactions can be part of an AI exposed opportunity. I do want to know if I'm using testosterone for muscle building and memory and things like that, that I don't want to be doing that in isolation. I want to be doing that with my cohort of everybody else that's using testosterone for those reasons. And so this type of future and this type of health company, the biggest company in the world, that absolutely is consumer obsessed, to say, I want you to have everything you need to optimize not just your health, but the health of the community around you, is the company that I think is going to make a big difference. And I should just say one more thing before we go on, is that today healthcare treats everybody as a population, right? When you walk into a doctor's office, they do not see you. They see a population, oh, it's a female of reproductive age, that's all I see. Versus an opportunity to move to where we are actually seen as individuals, because physicians can, we're just people. We have no ability to handle more than 4 or 5 things moving at a time. And AI can handle hundreds of thousands of things moving at a time. I mean, they have AI that is moving into the trillions of attributes. And so I think that we should be really disappointed with the healthcare that we have today.
Extremely.
You don't have to say that twice.
Disappointed with the health intelligence that we're working from today, because the technology is here to provide very high fidelity health intelligence. We're just not using it for that yet. And I think part of the reason we're not using it for that yet is because people don't understand how to use it for that yet. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. So yeah, average is all we can give you. Imagine if you were diagnosed with prostate cancer and you walked in and was like, yep, here you go, you're a population, we're gonna give you an average outcome. No one wants an average outcome.
I don't want to die. I don't want an average outcome.
Everybody wants optimal, but optimal means that we need to have this home-based model where all of the private and all of the things that we want public can be all analyzed by an AI safely, such that we can move towards a level of health intelligence that should be so obvious. Like, we should have access to that level of personalized health intelligence, which I like the, I can't recall who did it, the gentleman talked about a personal AI or a digital producer.
Yes.
That would, and same sort of thing for health.
Actually, Microsoft worked on the personal AI assistant. This was back in 2005.
And then hit the trough.
Yeah, the technology is always 20 years ahead, and now we need to apply those technologies to these use cases. So your book, did you receive a grant for this book?
Oh yes.
And how did it happen?
So this is the book, and it is also available as an NFT, since we're all talking NFTs as well. So Alexandria Labs has it, and it's a very different cover. You should look at that.
What is it?
It's this still Wealthcare Brigitte NFT and at Alexandria Labs. You should go find it. Anyway, so Near Foundation, they have a public goods grant, which a colleague said you should apply for that. When I looked at the application, I looked, okay, this is for software for public goods, right? But I answered all the questions without a software answer and just explained that the public needs not software, but something that they're familiar with in this case. And so yeah, Near Foundation gave me a grant that helped cover some of the publishing costs for this book. And I really appreciate it. And I'm off to NearCon in Lisbon in November. And so hopefully have a chance to see some of you there as well.
That's amazing. You can wave your magic wand. What would be the key trigger to push this Web3 future over the finish line?
Well,
how does it happen?
I think we have the wand in front of us now. We have AI, which is, before we just had data, and now we have this really amazing way in which that data can create value, and that's the AI. And I would say one thing, though, that was said earlier, that this is important to be careful about, because it was Yuval Noah Harari on a podcast with Lex Friedman that I think he had 2 really good points. He said, we keep talking about AI as a tool. It is not a tool that we are used to. We are used to tools for which we, the people, have control. And there's 2 properties of AI that makes it not a traditional tool. Number 1 is that AI can have ideas, and everything else we built previously, the printing press could print every single idea we had. It could not come up with one idea itself. Not one idea. And the second property of AI that does not make it a tool, but something very different, is AI can make decisions. And so we can build atomic bombs, but they cannot decide when to go off or in which direction to move. That's all still controlled by us. The thing about AI is it can make decisions. And so that's a very important distinction when we're talking about AI as just a tool. And one of the reasons I think these types of settings are so important, because if anything that you want to take home as a key point is we need to be involved. We need to participate. We need to understand what's happening, because this is not your standard tool. This is a new tool, and it will require a lot of participation and contribution from everybody in the room to get this right. It's not going to be right on its own.
What's the third point? So A is not a tool because AI can have ideas.
No, just 2 points.
Oh, it's two?
2 points.
Good. I
Yes.
got it. Great, great.
Because it can have ideas and make decisions, those 2 major things.
So
Yeah.
many notes. This, I can see like brains
Yes,
blowing up.
exactly. Perfect.
Oh, great.
There's
That's the NFT book.
Oh, the NFT book.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we have a limited first edition out right now, as it minted as an NFT.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna open it up for questions. More questions, or does anybody want to build this home-based Zone 1 startup with me?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny because when you said Web 2, all I could think of was I get really mad in my core because I'm a product, because they're taking my data. I'm just a commodity for them, meaning the companies that kind of rule Web 2, and what Web 3 gives me a hope that that will not be the future, that the future will be that I will make decisions on who gets my data and for what purpose, right?
Right.
Is that what you were pointing to?
Exactly, and I think one of the things that again gives us more responsibility is Web 2 happened on our watch, and the children again didn't have a choice, right? And it's affecting the kids more than it affected us, because we are still the last to be accidentally well.
Mm.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm wondering, if maybe like you're mentioning being able to have control of who has access to your healthcare data. I'm wondering what you think on being able to monetize that as a human and being able to have those transactions of your healthcare data be like on the blockchain, but also I'm wondering what you think about individual humans being able to monetize if and choose whether or not their information is used to train AI, like in this kind of like theoretical or this kind of like three-step model that you've made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that individual data is pretty useless to yourself or to others, that it's only useful once it's in the context of other people's data. I mean, it's crazy that we all have here the same lipid thresholds, like it's not personalized at all. The only way you're going to have access to what's reachable for you at whatever stage you are in your life is to have access to other people's data. And so that can be any marker that you're thinking of. You know, what should my LDL be? What should my HDL be? Right now, it's, as I say, the same level for everybody in the room. That has nothing to do with optimal. That has only to do with whether I give you a drug or not. Do you meet a threshold? But if you, of course, want to live your healthiest throughout the decades of your life, you would like to know what's optimal for me at 20 years of age. And that's something only the crowd can teach you. And so I think that the opportunity to access health intelligence is going to put us back into a world where we need each other to, in order to have our own personal freedom to choose our own lives.
That would
Yes,
bring us
so-
to. Oh, go ahead.
When we talk about health intelligence and health data, part of the ethos for Web3 has been kind of the democratization of data and the democratization of ownership. What I foresee is that companies will now, instead of wanting to be the holders of your data, they will compete on who best processes your data. But that also creates, with what you were saying, that none of our individual data means anything as an individual, but it only gains context and real understanding when we take it into the whole. So it seems that that would encourage data monopolies. Whereas you have the Kaiser health system, you have the public health system, you have this other health system, And the only information that they would have would basically be the data lakes that they create. So the greater good that AI can provide would only be limited to those specific data lakes. So how would we, I've set up a question, but how would we be able to provide the greatest public benefit in an environment, in a context like that, where those data lakes, moated data lakes, are incentivized?
Right, so right now, the Kaisers of the world, for instance, just have your clinic and hospital data. What we see is a world in which you now augment that data with your movement through wearables and with other technologies to pick up your key attributes of how you live your life. So converting your physical attributes into digital attributes. And that's something that you would then combine through the 21st Century Cures Act. Kaiser has to give you your data if you ask for it, and then allow that to be offered to various marketplaces that you're interested in cooperating with or not. And so that depends on you as an individual, whether you're offering it to marketplaces that either pay you enough or that are working on a problem that you care about. Say cognitive decline is something that you care about, so you're going to go in there. So I see a future where, yes, a monopoly would have a greater amount of data, but we are not going to get there if, in fact, each of us gets to control where our personal data shows up. We'll have wishes to participate in different data lakes, data cooperatives, DAOs, etc., based on our own personal preferences. And so I would see AI as a model that works both within a DAO and across DAOs for different purposes.